the expensive mic today, I might sound a little different. Hey, I wrote this shit for Ronnie, just know I'm here for you, brother. Reminiscing on them days when I shed a tear for you, brother. Know the toughest days you've been through are in the rear for you, brother. God moves on his own time, and he made it clear to you, brother. See the finish line. I visualize realities I wanted, then invented mine. It ain't how you start, it's how you finish. Word to the scrimmage line. Luckily, my hustle is my passion. This shit intertwined.
Dang, son, we getting bookings off the Heezy today.
Right? This shit cranking.
Oh, we recording?
That's what I'm talking about, boy.
We got big Monday energy coming through today. Big
sir.
Monday energy. It's been a great day.
Yes, sir.
We're going to cap it off here with a podcast, but it's not going to be the end of the day, but it's all good. Transfer that energy over here.
Yes, sir.
But cool. I think we're rocking episode 25 today. This is going to be like kind of like off the dome piece for both of us. Just something that we thought about right as we hopped into the session. We were supposed to do a interview today, and the guy that we were supposed to interview had some conflicts. And so, yeah, here we are. We didn't want to let you guys down. So anyways, today we're going to be talking about the topic of auto-suggestion, kind of what that means to us. And I know probably the first thing you think about is like auto suggestion when you're texting somebody and it like pops up like the autocorrect word. It's kind of the same thing, to be honest with you. Like I was thinking about that concept, but where it originates from in my mind and where the topic kind of came up from was Think and Grow Rich. Like I've been listening to the audiobook recently, and there's a chapter 4 that's specifically talking about the topic of auto suggestion. And just to sum it up, like talking about how your thoughts ultimately can lead to like your realities, whether it's positive or negative. And so I thought it was like something interesting, just because I've talked about this myself numerous times, where or I've mentioned this myself numerous times, where I've said like I like to think that like naturally I'm like a pretty negative person, like I've like had like very negative habits, if you will, if that makes sense. But now, I feel like I've like really altered it to be like where I literally wake up like eyes like wide open, like let's fucking go, and like it's all just kind of like a bunch of different things. But I think for me it really kind of comes down into the thoughts and like the overall vision, shit like that, is kind of where that fire comes from. But yeah, so the topic of auto suggestion should be interesting. Little relay here.
Yeah, Rocky has entered the chat. So my guy is tuning in. But
he's our guest today. He knew we were supposed to have
Rocky
somebody who's like, man, can't let you guys down. Gotta have that guest.
Yeah, gotta have one. He's needy right now. But anywho, but yeah, so like in the topic of auto suggestion, like it brings up something that is a concept with psychology and human biology, which is the default mode network. So that's basically auto suggestion as a whole. So like in human like biology and psychology, we have what's called a default mode network, which is essentially like a accumulation of all of our past experiences neurologically that has brought us to the point where we have immediate reactions. So think about like when you go to the doctor and somebody, or the doctor, not somebody, but the doctor like hits your knee with that little thing and like your leg extends, like we have those, not just physical, but also mental immediate reactions that precede something that happens, right? So like think about fight or flight. You have something that's traumatic that happens, you either fight or you flight, and you have that automatic like mode network to that situation. So I mean, it's like it's also like scientifically backed that we do have this default mode network that's based off of all of our past experiences and things that we've been through, where we drew a specific conclusion that comes off of a specific circumstance that we're approaching, So it's like if we have a traumatic event that happened when we were a little kid and something just like hits that same heartstring for us, like we're going to have the same reaction that we did back then, just because it's immediately programmed into ourselves and into our minds, right? So it's like it's something where in a lot of cases it is negative for most people, is that default mode network, because of the fact that it comes from experiences that were traumatic. Like most of our experiences, unless you're unless you're doing it intentionally, most of our experiences come from, or most of our reactions come from negative experience. Unless you are doing the work to like acknowledge yourself for successful moments. It's a really interesting concept to even think about like schooling, right? And I know I'm kind of going off in a tangent now, but Julian talks about this all the time in Wake Up Wealthy, and like talks about how with schooling, like we grow up being told what we did wrong, not what we did right. Right. So like when you submit a test and you get your test back, what's circled? All the things that you fucked up, not the things that you got right. Right. So like since we are programmed as little kids, we're consistently programmed to see what we're doing wrong and not what we're doing right. So in most cases, like we have this negative feedback loop in our default mode network that says, okay, like this uncomfortable thing is happening. So I'm going to grab onto the last uncomfortable thing that happened to me and assume that the same outcome is going to come out of that same situation, you know? So that's really what creates this like negative feedback loop of consistently like burying yourself within this like default mode network of just assuming that like something's going to go the same way as it did previous, when in reality, we even talked about this Monday on the training of expectation, which is kind of attached to like what I'm talking about now. It's like I was talking about how when you create an expectation, you limit the lens in which you see reality. So when you expect something, you only see that one circumstance happening. And if anything else happens, it's like a loss and it becomes this big thing, right? So like with the default mode network, that's essentially what we do is like when we get in uncomfortable situations, we cling on to this past experience and we allow that to be the expectation of this experience. And anything outside of that becomes not an option. Like it's not something we see. So this is why most people get in this negative feedback loop of like being broke. Because it's like, well, I've never had money. And right now, things are scarce. I'm feeling scarcity. I don't have a lot of money right now. So I can only rely on past experience of being broke, which then reinstills the same like feedback loop of being broke, you know? So like, that's why it's important, even with like money mindset work, to constantly see yourself and view yourself and visualize yourself as already having what you want, so that you can create that reality as an option. You know, like if you're constantly visualizing yourself already having the things that you want, now that reality becomes an option in real life. Whereas if you base it off of past experiences, you're just going to have the same thing that you've already had, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I think that's a really fire way to break it down. And you know, like to just kind of like go off of that too, like it's a lot of the reason why people continually find themselves like in a fucked situation, you know, like they're constantly like what you're talking about, you know, like the default like kind of outcome is already projected as something negative, so they're like manifesting that negative situation because it's just what always happens, you know. And the thought of this topic in general comes from the opposite, so I'm glad that you're bringing this up, because this like where it really comes from in Think and Grow Rich in the book is more so visualization and getting what you really want in life, you know, and specifically talking about money. So they're talking about visualization, you know, just like, you know, feeling what it's going to feel like to see that money in your bank account, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, it's creating that thought of auto suggestion, you know, like it's creating the positive side of it. And I think that's like where it becomes really impactful is because like for me, that's like when I start to get hyped up, you know, like when I like start to think about it, when I start to think about things that way, you know, it's like where I'm starting to like jump inside, like, dude, hell yeah, you know, like shit's connecting, you know, like the dots are working, you know. So it's cool to hear the other side too, because to your point, you know, that's like where I would say most people are, you know, 99% of people, like they're on that side of things, you know, where it's just a negative loophole. They can't figure out why they're constantly always fucked, you know, like they don't understand why me, you know, like why does this only happen to me? And in reality, like a lot of the problems like aren't even that serious, you know. It's like you know, it's like, I mean, if we think about life on a very basic level, like we're in the US right now versus, you know, the other countries that are fighting with each other, you know, and like on a very basic level, like how bad do we really have it, you know, like why do we need to be in this negative mindset, you know? So
Yeah. I mean, it's like at the end of the day, if you're trying to create like anything positive out of looking in the past, you're probably fucked. You know what I mean? Like there's like all of us have like shit that we've done in the past that we're not proud of, or situations that have happened that aren't like beneficial to us. And that's where most people operate, is like, well, this has never happened to me before, so it can't happen. You know, or like I've never had money, so I can't get money, and like all these things. And to your point, it's like that's really what creates, for like you're saying, you know, it's like if you do that in the morning and it changes your mood, it's because you're creating that as a potential outcome, instead of just being like, oh, I'm just going to look at, I mean, shit, if I operated from my past, I'd be completely fucked. Like, you know. But yeah, I mean, it's super interesting because it's the reality that like we can create is like infinite, you know? And I really do believe that in all ways, like no matter who you are. It's like, I've also, to talk about like the Kanye documentary, which I've already brought up like 3 times today. But the Kanye documentary, if you haven't seen it, you need to see it like fucking yesterday. It's so goddamn good. And like, it's a 3-part documentary on Netflix, and it's wild that it's even real, because it's basically like someone he grew up with recorded the entire, like his entire come up, dude, from like when he was just creating beats in like 98. He recorded all these videos and kept them because he knew that Kanye was going to be famous. So it's all real footage from Kanye in like 1990, like just making beats out of like a trap house, literally, like in a fucking, and like back like footage of him just getting denied by like so many things, like because he came up as a producer, right? So like when he tried to make music, everybody was like, no, you're a producer, you're not a musician. So like everybody tried to shoot him down. He had all these famous beats, like he worked with Jay-Z and all these other guys, but he still got denied as an artist when he tried to make his music. And like, it was crazy because all these hits, like Hey Mama, Jesus Walks, like all these like legendary rap songs were recorded in just like this like small ass bedroom that like literally just had like a bed on the floor and like his desk with like a computer, you know, and like he was just recording it with barely any equipment. And like I say that in the background to say that like Kanye was like, the whole documentary you watch, it's like the perfect example of like manifestation and creation. Like the dude just didn't give a fuck no matter what people said no. Like he got said no to like anybody and everybody, and he was just like, fuck that, dude. Like they're just not the right one. Like someone's gonna get it, you know? Like there's not one piece of that documentary where you see Kanye like drop his head or drop his shoulders, you know? Like he's literally just like moves the same way the whole time. Like, and he just knew that like he had what nobody else had, and he knew he was going to find the right situation. And he even like talks about just like how you have to like control your reality, you know, you have to like see it like it already happened. And it's just really dope to see the background of it too, where it's like, I mean, the dude's a billionaire now, you know, it's like starting from this situation where he had all these no's, and like it's a perfect representation of like anybody's success story. But it's just really cool to see like real footage of him back then. It's like he still had that same energy where it was like, yeah, fuck all that. Like they said no, fuck them, you know, like they said no, fuck them. And he just knew it was always going to work out. So it's like, that's the big thing, is like visualization and being able to just know that like you do create the experience that you have in front of you, as long as you control your mind and you control the way that you view things, you know, and you don't allow a negative auto suggestion instead of a positive one, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even if you think about him to this day, you know, like he's still doing that. He's still dealing with so much backlash on every move he makes, you know, whether it's like
Yeah.
how ugly his shoes are or whatever the fuck it is,
Yeah.
you know, like people are constantly shitting on him. Like even like his last album, you know, like like Jesus or whatever it was, you know, like, you know, I just remember listening to it and just being like, golly, this is like the worst music I've ever heard in my life, you know, like, but
Yeah.
like at the same time, like to your point, he really does not give a fuck, you know, like he's like truly creating his own life, you know, and like living in his own lane, and we're all living in it, you know, like
Yeah,
that's his
for sure.
mentality, you know, it's
And
like,
like Kanye's, and I know we're getting into a Kanye topic now, but like Kanye's a perfect representation of like how you create life. Like I think
yeah,
it's like the dude just gives zero fucks, and like you can view him as like cocky, you can view him as arrogant, all these things, but like really he's just willing to say the shit that most people won't. You know what I mean? Like he's just like willing to say what most people won't say. So as a result, he looks like this. And don't get me wrong, like right now is probably not the best timing for me to go on a Kanye rant because he's like being absolutely ridiculous on Instagram right now. But like all in all, like the dude is like incredibly smart. He like even like the whole like thing where everybody was like, oh, Kanye's crazy, he's depressed, like all this shit. Like the dude was saying such real shit. Like if you go back to those interviews, like it's a lot in the documentary of like that time span too, where everybody was like, Kanye's crazy, he's going nuts. And like, dude, you listen to it and you're like, he's kind of like saying like real shit, like facts, you know, like he was talking about when he created Yeezy and like he talked about how everybody just like shitted on him, even though it was the fastest growing brand in the world. And like all the designers, he got like, you know, like Louis didn't hire him because he was Kanye and he was like, I'm fucking like literally have the #1 growing brand in the world. Like there was all these situations that were happening that were like, oh, like Kanye's crazy, don't work with him. When in reality, he's just like, he's unapologetically him, which is something we can all learn from, you know, just being yourself and like creating your own reality the way that he does is by just being him and just like allowing other people to have their assumptions and whatever, you know, he lives like Cardone does, like what we said, you know, it's like, I just want to be seen. I don't give a fuck if people like it or not, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's like one of the big things too, is like attaching like, you know, kind of like the faith and desire into the topic of autosuggestion. You know, it's like what it really comes down to is that right there. Like it's like, if I could think of it as like an equation, it would be like faith plus desire equals autosuggestion, you know, like that would be like how I would envision it. But like to me, like that's the biggest thing, you know, like if you like you create that you create that real reality of yourself or of what your ideal desired outcome is, you know, based on having like undeniable faith and desire that you are going to become something great, you know, like no matter what. And it's usually around like some crazy ass shit that's going to be like controversial and it's going to be, you know, like groundbreaking, you know, and like even if you think about like his, you know, his topic of like the Yeezys and stuff, like, you know, like I don't know, me personally, I think they look terrible and like the cost is like ridiculous, you know, but that's the same point, you know, like the cost is ridiculous, you know, like and people are paying that shit, you know, like I mean, like it's crazy. So like I mean, you know, and like what it really comes down to is just probably more than likely the fact that he had the faith and desire that it was going to be a great brand, you know, and like it was a good representation of what he wanted it to be, you know, and like that's all it really has to come down to, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of like the biggest thing with autosuggestion in general is like making something so real that it actually happens. And to your point earlier, you know, like it very well could be something very negative because you're constantly thinking about it and you just bring it to reality. And like that's why I think like the chapter in Think and Grow Rich is so powerful, because it's more so talking about it in a positive situation of how you can kind of get fired up about the shit situation that you're in, you know? And like, I think that's like the most powerful thing about like the topic in general is more so like how to find like motivation when there is no motivation to be found, you know? Like that's like the biggest thing for me. I had something else I was going to say off of that, but I can't remember. It slipped my mind. I don't know. Cool. Yeah. Anything else on the topic?
Nah, I think I'm good.
Boom. Autosuggestion, create your own fucking reality. Make sure that thing's positive, man. You don't want no negative bullshit life, man. It's terrible.
Fact.
Mic drop. We out.
Yeah. I'm on the expensive mic today. I might sound a little different. Hey, I wrote this shit for Ronnie, just know I'm here for you, brother. Reminiscing on them days when I shed a tear for you, brother. Know the toughest days you've been through are in the rear for you, brother. God moves on his own time, and he made it clear to you, brother. See the finish line. I visualize realities I wanted, then invented mine. It ain't how you start, it's how you finish, word.